Hey Cozie Homies! Welcome back to The Zone. Today I'm making a video that I've wanted to make for a really long time, and it is me talking about books that changed my childhood. So yes, today's setup is basically everything from my childhood, like things that I think define me as a child. So back then when I was a little boy, I like to read a lot of random books. So today's video is mainly about me just sharing with y'all the books that I used to read last time. And I also brought out a mini collection of all the toys that I slept with. Basically I feel like even till now, right, I still sleep soft toys nowadays, especially Ice Bear. I sleep Ice Bear a lot nowadays. But before that, I used to sleep with all these toys before, and I just think all these toys really mean so much to me. Having this mini soft companion that sleeps with you every day, every night, and then sometimes you feel stressed, you kind of talk to them, they give you comfort. So yeah, I think there's a need to bring out all my family members today to talk about my childhood basically. So yeah, but nonetheless, today's focus is on the books that I think really changed me as a child. Alright, and yeah, even for today's drink, is this mini packet milk kind of thing. Normally when I go to school last time, I always bring along a small Tupperware, a lunch box, and I always put this little small milk packet inside. It's not a lot, but it just kind of it doesn't make all the biscuits too dry, I guess. So yeah. So yeah, actually all the books that I want to share today, right, there is no order of significance. I'm only giving the order in terms of how big the books are. So I started the smaller books first, then the bigger books. Okay? So the smallest book, the first book on our list today is Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. And I think I really love this book a lot. It's one of the few adventure books that I actually read completely word for word from top to bottom. I think I read almost every single Dan Brown's books basically every single book that Dan Brown has ever written. I think I read them before because I really love how he talks about mystery and adventure, and especially how a lot of his books are very cryptic. Yeah, it's kind of like an escape room, right? But it's worldwide, international kind of thing. And because for me, I love Renaissance art. I love things nearer to the ancient times and stuff like this. And this book kind of took place in the Louvre, which is a museum that I really want to visit when I have the money next time. Essentially, it's about how different paintings and artworks that Leonardo da Vinci put out could potentially have secret codes and secret messages, secret meanings behind them. And it's basically an adventure of how they decipher all the different meanings that they see from the Last Supper or from the Mona Lisa, and they kind of solve a mystery. I can't really exactly remember what the exact storyline is. I read this book so many years ago. But yeah, I just love the idea of it. And I think I still remember there's this one scene that struck me the most, right? It's about how they say about the painting of the Last Supper, and they say about how the positioning of the different disciples and the different people in the Last Supper, the painting, right? It kind of foreshadows the death of Jesus, and about how basically leading lines and artistic choices that Leonardo da Vinci made that kind of make this painting so captivating and so full of meaning. And yeah, I think I just love this book so much. It opens up endless possibilities, of what these paintings could mean and about the significance and meaning behind Renaissance art. His most recent book, right, which isn't very recent also, it's called Origins. I think it was released about 2015, 2016. And the book is really good. I feel if you're interested in science fiction or this term that I recently found out called speculative fiction, where you learn about how the author speculates the future to be. I think the book will be really good because Origins talk about AI, they talk about a lot of all those automated stuff basically. And I think the book was really cool also. They're about computers, supercomputers, and whether robots can have consciousness. So yeah, I just love everything that Dan Brown puts out. His books are all very thought-provoking, they're all really well thought out. Yeah. Next book on the list is Lord of the Flies. So back then when I was in secondary school, for Sec 3, Sec 4, right, I took literature elective. Literature elective or elective literature? Okay, whatever, basically. So yeah, so we have to study this for 2 years, Lord of the Flies. And I won't say I'm obsessed with this book because I'm kind of forced to read this, right? But I really love analyzing and reading this book. You can see all the sticky notes that I have and all the annotations in my book. Yeah, it's I just think this book really kind of sparked the joy in me for literature. I didn't study literature in JC and things like this, but I think loving literature has always been part of my identity. I feel So yeah, this book talks about the tension and talks about the relationship between civilization and savagery. Like are humans innately savage, or do we have like some form of civilization in us? Like is civilization a social construct? I just love discussing about this topic, and especially about Lord of the Flies. Could it be like alluding to the devil? Like what does the Lord of the Flies actually stand for? Who is the devil? Who is the Lord of the Flies? And I think 2 years of listening and to my teacher talking about this book and going for lessons that analyzes the themes and quotes in this book, I just think it opens a whole new world of analyzing and reading what other writers have to talk about, and kind of see the deeper meaning and what's the different interpretations that people have for the same text. And it's just so exciting. I feel like this book is really one of the most memorable books of my lifetime. Not only because I studied it a lot, but I just think it just trains my brain, trains myself to appreciate literature more, I guess. So yeah, it's a very significant milestone book in my life. And talk about literature, right? That's for my upper secondary, but for lower secondary, it was even younger, Sec 1, Sec 2. I think in Sec 2, one of the texts we need to learn is Macbeth. And yeah, this is the original book that I brought to class, and you can see all the highlights and annotations and things like this. Yeah, I just love doing all this so much. And I feel like Macbeth is also one of the best Shakespearean texts ever written. I don't think I read a lot of Shakespeare, but I finished reading Hamlet last year, and then I roughly know Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, all his classics, right? I think Macbeth is one of the most exciting storyline that Shakespeare has ever written, because it talks a lot about witchcraft and magic and darkness, what happens at night and things like this. And I think it's just very magical, I would say. I think Macbeth really inspired me a lot in terms of my life and my passion and things I'm interested in. The story of royalty, what happens in the castles and palaces, and then power struggles, what it means to be a man. I love that topic about Lady Macbeth, and then the unsex me here, out them spot. All those are really really cool concepts that they play around with. And how Macbeth, is he a weak man just because he doesn't have ambition, and what it means for a woman, especially during this time that this book was written, what it means for a woman to be powerful. So sometimes perhaps the women behind the scenes are the one actually running the country rather than the king himself. And I think all these are just very cool concepts that they touch on. This just makes me so happy, talking about this book. And also back then in lower secondary, we have this drama acting competition, and I acted as Lady Macbeth. It was so fun. I love the experience of it, and it's just so magical. I just feel like everything about this book, everything about how I relate to this book, all the experiences I have related to this book are just so magical and so fun. So yes, this book brings me a lot of good memories. Ooh, this is earlier on, I think perhaps in my primary school days. Yeah, this is Parallel Worlds by MICHIO KAKU. MICHIO KAKU is a really really cool physicist. I watched his videos on YouTube last time, and I feel like he's a very, I'm not sure if charismatic is the best word to use, but I just love the way he talks about physics. It's just so interesting. He kind of makes everything so interesting. And because I know he's a big researcher in string theory, in physics, so it just gives a lot of endless possibilities. All the topics to talk about. Is there a god, parallel universes, and the origins of a universe, the Big Bang, and how the future of a universe would be. And actually, I feel like before I entered secondary school and JC, right, I love physics a lot. I really love how they talk about the speed of light, or sometimes could there be alien civilizations outside of this planet? And many different things like the theory of relativity, when you're on the train, and then if you're in the train and the observer outside of the train, all these kind of things, all these thought experiments in physics, I think are very exciting for me. And I think this book, I don't think I read this book completely in detail, because back then I was just so young, right? I probably just flipped the pages for fun. And this book, it just talks about a lot of physics, theoretical physics, but in terms of the cosmos level, astrological events and many different things. So they talk about the possibility of new worlds, possibility of aliens living out there, the different types of civilizations. I remember that very clearly. There's the type 1 civilizations, type 2 civilizations, and many different kind of ideas that MICHIO KAKU talked about a lot. And I really love everything physics related back then. It's one of the few childhood passions that kind of died off, I feel after actually learning physics in JC. But I love how much imagination it gave me when I was reading this book. But yeah, ultimately I think his YouTube videos are more exciting for me, I guess. Yeah, but nonetheless, it's still a good book to read. Even if you're just a casual reader, I think it's very enlightening and you have a lot of insights about the universe. Yeah. Ooh, next book is a very, very, very special book. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. This is probably one of the best-selling books of like all time. And I got this book as like my birthday gift, I think when I was 11 or 12. Because you know, in primary school, right, I've been very, very interested in like mythology, especially Greek mythology. And one of my best friends back then, he bought me this book for my birthday because this book talks about Greek mythology, and I think he kind of read the synopsis of it, and he's like, "Oh, you're definitely gonna enjoy this book," and he bought this book for me. So I remember when I received this book, I was so happy because I think this is like the first ever birthday gift that I truly like enjoy and feel happy about. You know how sometimes people give you birthday presents out of like tradition, or they give you out of social pressure because you know you're part of their family or their relative, that they give you like presents, right? So you know they give you like things that I don't really necessarily enjoy. But this book I thoroughly enjoy it because before Percy Jackson I read actual like Greek mythology, you know all those like children picture books where they have like Greek gods floating around in the skies and things like this. It's those kind of books, right, that I read a lot last time. And when I read this book, it kind of like solidifies the presence of these gods and goddesses in our planet, basically. So they talk about like, you know, how Poseidon looks like, how Zeus looks like, the possibility of demigods, half-bloods, right, in our society. And this is just so cool because, you know, as an 11, 12-year-old kid, right, I'd probably be like, wow, it's so exciting, so fascinating. And it still is to me, honestly. Ever since this book came out, I read the entire series of Percy Jackson. I also read the entire series of The Heroes of Olympus, which I think The Heroes of Olympus is actually a better series in my opinion. I think the entire series is very cohesive and it's just more well written, like, in my opinion. It's much more visual, much more impactful. It has a bigger punch to it, and I just really love the entire series of The Heroes of Olympus. But yeah, the Lightning Thief always holds a special place to me, and you know, even the movie came out, right, for the Lightning Thief. It's so cool. Like, I don't think the movie did the book justice, but the movie shows us, you know, how these gods could possibly look like, all the supernatural powers, how Camp Half-Blood could possibly look like. I think that movie did a good job like portraying that. And I still remember the scene of like Medusa, like how Medusa is wearing this, like, I remember this black outfit that she wore in the movie. It's just so cool because I would never imagine Medusa to look like that. So yeah, this book is so exciting. I thoroughly love this book so much. The next book I'm going to talk about is also by the same author, and I just have to talk about this book, The Red Pyramid by RIORDAN. And this entire series, I think it's called the Kane Chronicles, is like a series of 3 books that revolves around these siblings, like the Kane siblings. So like there is Carter Kane and Sandy Kane, I think, the two, like a brother-sister duo. And yeah, I love Egyptian mythology a lot. I think for me, like Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, and Chinese mythology are like the top 3 like countries that I read a lot about. Yeah, I think those mythology stories, you know, about those gods, right, it's just so cool. And I think, right, you know, The Heroes of Olympus might be my favorite series by RIORDAN, but I think this series on Egyptian mythology is really well written. And I wouldn't use the word revolutionary, but I think it's just so interesting because I've almost never seen people writing about Egyptian mythology like this in a fiction book. Like Greek mythology, there's a few like people that writes about Greek mythology now and then, but I rarely see like Egyptian mythology being in mainstream media. And I think also because there's like, you know, Greek mythology can be seen everywhere. Even, you know, the way we name our planets after Roman gods, or like, you know, the way we talk about like the star constellations, all those have a lot of Greek mythology origins to it. But Egyptian mythology is not so, you know, popular. Like when you talk about Egyptian mythology, everyone only thinks about mummies and like, you know, mummies rising up from their coffins and just going around hunting people down. I think, you know, that is just a very overused like theme lah in Egyptian mythology. But there's so much more to Egyptian mythology, which I think this book did a lot of justice to lah. So like they talk about, you know, dealing with Apophis, the god of chaos, and what it means, you know, for you to be Ra, the sun god, the rising sun. So like, you know, how the sun conquers darkness and things like this, how they try to revive the sun god, and a lot of cool things like they talk about, and it's just so exciting for me I feel like. Okay, so I got a bit disrupted just now, and now I'm back again. Okay, so next book, right, is a book that I think is probably one of the earliest books I've ever read in my entire life, okay? So tell me why. Not the Taylor Swift song, but like this book, right? I feel like because I like to read books that actually talk a lot and deal with a lot of knowledge and information. And this book is a perfect book for it because it's like you ask questions and they give you answers. And there's so many pictures, you know, like as a kid, how can I resist all these pictures, right? So yeah, like, you know, I learned so much from this book, you know, like about, you know, why is fire so hot? Why do we need oil? And why is the lion called the king of the beast? And things like this. And this book really just kind of like exposes me, like my childhood mind, to like so many things outside of this world, outside of my own, you know, four walls, outside my own house. I learned so much from this book. You learn about volcanoes, about how the body works, learn about dinosaurs. Like, you know, the most recent video I did, one of the more recent videos I did is this Li Gongqian National History Museum visit with my friend, where we saw dinosaur bones and like prehistoric animals, right? I think partially like this book also fueled the interest. This book kind of like allows me to be more interested, like exposes me to all these different topics that I'm interested in right now. So yeah, there's so many like so many books, so many questions and answers to all this, which I love a lot. Yeah. There's also a series that's like just tell me how, tell me when, tell me what, right? So it's like, it's so cool. And I think my favorite kind of like animations, right, is kind of these kind of things. Like, you get to see what's inside a bird, you get to see what is inside a dinosaur and things like this. I think these are the kind of things that really excite me, getting to see the mechanisms and how all the different things work. So yes, this book is always going to be super special. Ooh. Next book is the only Chinese book I have in this entire collection. I do read some Chinese books here and there, but this book, I think it's one of the more like recent books that I read as a teenager. And this book, right, is a lot about Chinese philosophy, like ancient Chinese philosophy. So a lot of people know what Taoism is. This is one of the books like Taoism called Tao Te Ching. And this book kind of talks so much about what we know about Taoism and also about Chinese philosophy. Because, you know, like, Chinese philosophy has always been very influenced by Taoist beliefs and Taoist views. And all these views aren't really, you know, a lot of people have this confusion between Taoism and like Chinese folk religion. So like a lot of people say, oh, because, you know, I worship all those like Chinese gods, I am a Taoist. But the real Taoism, right, that originated from China, is more of like a philosophical way of thinking. It isn't necessarily about worshipping gods only lah, basically. And this book, it really opened my mind to so many things. Like, you know, a lot of people know like the concepts of yin and yang, the concepts of like duality. Yeah, I think duality is a very big driving force in Chinese philosophy. And this book talks so much about Tao. So I'm not sure if you all heard about Tao before, but Tao is like the way. So like, you know, what is the way that the universe runs? So like this natural driving force of the universe is known as the Tao. And, you know, like, there's so much about this book that really excites me. They analyze a lot of the different quotes in Chinese, and they give a lot of like insights about philosophy and things like this. So like, there's some random quotes that I kind of like a lot lah from this book. So for example, this one say, 人就是想活得久，所以才活不久。人就是想生活得好，所以才累死自己。I think it's about, you know, how in the pursuit of happiness, many times we like tire ourselves. We kind of like 累死自己 like, basically we tire ourselves to death essentially. And I think how this kind of book is very interesting because it's about duality, you know. Like in every good phenomenon there will always be a bad phenomenon. In every bad phenomenon there will always be a good phenomenon. Not phenomenon, but like energy. So no matter like how good or bad something is, there will always be a flip side to it. And it is this duality that drives the universe. So, you know, there's no such thing as like pure masculinity or pure femininity. It's like all men have like a more like a feminine side to them, all women have a masculine side to them as well. And you can talk about, you know, light and darkness. You know, in daylight there are shadows, but at night time there's moonlight. So there's this play in duality. There's like water and fire, there is like tall and short, there is hard and soft. So it's a lot of the philosophy actually comes from the interactions between all these universal comparisons, these universal opposites that kind of drives the universe based on their ideology. And I had so much fun reading this book because it just gives me so much insight and so much more knowledge about what ancient Chinese people, you know, like our ancestors, what's their way of thinking, how do they perceive the universe around them, which I think is a really cool book to read. Yeah. Ooh, this is one of my favorite books ever. And as you can tell, like how old and, you know, moldy this book is, right? This shows you how old this book is. So this book is called What on Earth Happened? The Complete Story of the Planet, Life and People from the Big Bang to the Present Day. And I just love this book so much. So like, I'm not sure, you know, do you know the book Sapiens? by Yuval Harari. I just finished reading that book, and I'm going to make a book review about that for sure. But this book kind of like just planted this seed, you know, of interest in like big history of evolution, of how things change around us. And I think this book is the starting, like it's the trigger for me that allows me to want to find out more after reading *Sapiens* and things like this. So this book, I think there's a lot of graphics as well. I think the way this book is organized, right, is so cool. Like you see along the sides of this book, right? So like you can see these colorful sides. Now here they write like a timing. I'm not sure if you can see it. Like they write a timing over here because they kind of like, it's something called a doomsday clock or like something along those lines. So basically it's to say, you know, if the entire timeline of the universe is being summarized into 24 hours, we humans occupy like less than the final second of the entire 24 hours. And then this book just talks about, you know, perhaps, you know, in 235959 what's going on. What happens at 235959 is literally like half of this book's long. It's like, oh, at 1:19 p.m. how was the universe like? And I think the way they talk about it is super interesting. And you get to see so much about human history, talk about the Big Bang and about evolution, how life starts on Earth. Basically just like explaining to you ever since the Big Bang to the present day what has happened. And it's just so exciting. Like I always get so fascinated because, you know, they say how our human mind, right, can't really comprehend big history. It can't comprehend deep time. It can't comprehend deep time, that's right. Because all these are like millions of years, the timeline, the scales in terms of millions of years. We humans, we can't really perceive it that well. So a lot of them are actually from our imagination. And I think this is actually super interesting because it gives me so much more creative freedom to think about how, you know, prehistoric animals would look like, how the first humans interact with each other. And, you know, in ancient times, you know, what it's like to live in ancient Rome, what it's like to live in India, ancient times. It's just super interesting. I really love reading this book so much. Oh, this book is like my prized possession, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So I just mentioned to you about how I feel like Egyptian mythology and the ancient Egyptian culture is always being misrepresented in traditional media. I think this book, right, is literally the actual like manuscript, the actual Egyptian Book of the Dead being translated to English alongside with the original scrolls. So you can see all the Egyptian hieroglyphics and things like this. It's so exciting. And this is actually the original text of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So everything we know about mummies and everything we know about how the Egyptians are being buried last time, this is like a ceremonial like guidebook for them. This book really talks a lot about themes that are present throughout our human history, but we never actually thought about it. So they talk a lot about judgment in your afterlife. So let me find that scene here. I think I can find this scene here. So yes, it's actually right in front. This is the most iconic scene in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's the weighing of the heart ceremony. So right, I think this book is also talked about in the Kane Chronicles series by RIORDAN, where they talk about this process in detail. So you know, like this is Thoth, the god of wisdom, and this is Anubis, the god of the dead. And I can't remember what the animal is. This animal is called Amit, the devourer. So essentially, they will weigh the heart of the deceased against the feather of truth by Maat, the goddess of justice and truth, I suppose. And you know, if your heart weighs heavier than this, it means you're not truthful in front of the gods. And after that, this Amit the devourer will devour your heart, and you can't get a good afterlife afterwards, essentially. I just love all this Egyptian art so much. You get to see how the different gods look like, what are the costumes that they wear, and like how they do all those like decorations, which I think is super interesting, to me at least. And yeah, I just feel like Egyptian mythology is always something that we all should get into. It's super cool. And I know like, actually, one of my most favorite like Egyptian like concepts that they actually talk about, right, is actually about how the human soul is not 5 parts. I can't remember exactly what is it, but I think there is the Ba, the Ka, then there is our shadow, our name, and our physical like flesh, our body. And these, according to the ancient Egyptians, right, these are the 5 parts that come together to make you human. I can't remember exactly what the difference in the Ba and the Ka is, but I think one of them just goes through this entire Egyptian Book of the Dead process, where they go into the underworld, get themselves being judged and things like this. And then there's like your shadow, which is also part of identity. And I think that's very cool, like your shadow is also part of identity. Yeah, actually if you want me to make a video about mythology alone, talking about creation stories or like gods and how they fight monsters and things like this, just do let me know. I'll be very happy to talk about all this, like, because these are the kind of things that I'm genuinely interested in. And the next book, Signs and Symbols. I love this book so much. It's like a mini encyclopedia, a mini dictionary that talks about the different symbols and what different animals, different plants, different motifs, patterns, what do they actually represent in different cultures. For example, they say about what the dragon could represent. Like the dragon in Eastern countries, like in China, a dragon represents the emperor, represents a very like sacred animal. In the Western history, there's like Saint George who killed the dragon as a symbolic act of freedom from oppression. Then there's also what does the unicorn represent, heaven and hell, different hand signals, like when you put your hands together, what does it mean in different cultures, and handshakes, what do they mean. Let me find my favorite section of this book. Yeah, it's essentially all this, like they show you all the different types of symbols and then they kind of explain to you what they mean. Oh yeah, like this Chimera, I can't pronounce it properly, but like basically it's like a snake, lion, goat hybrid creature, symbol of victory and of spirit over matter. And I think all these are just very cool, like things that I like to learn about and read, like the different symbols and what they mean. Even like different types of crosses, you can learn so much about it. So this book just sheds some light about how different cultures all around the world, how they interpret certain animals, certain items that they think are like holy, that they think are sacred, or they think represent like a lot of importance or cultural significance to them. The final book for today is The Complete Human Body Guide. Okay, so Dr. Alice Roberts, she's one of like my most like favorite like doctors like who talks about the human body. So I don't think I ever thought of becoming a doctor or like studying medicine, but I am just so fascinated by how the human body works. So inside you can see a lot of all those like anatomy, all the different organs, the different parts of your body. Oh, this book is so heavy. So like you can see all the different veins and capillaries, the digestive system and muscles and things like this. So as a kid, right, I wouldn't really read this to understand the different scientific knowledge, biological knowledge. But what I am interested in, right, is just looking at the pictures and all the different colors, the visuals, how they come together. It's just so fascinating to see that all this are actually part of your human body. It enlightens me back then, right, about our body is so much more than what it seems. Just like in life, there's just so much more to what the human eye can see, which I think is important for us to take note of. It's just so cool to like, actually read and learn about all this back then as a child. I think all this really allows me to become who I am today. It allows me to actually get in touch with myself and I won't use about spirituality, but it just allows me to explore so much about the world around me, and it really shapes the way I think and perceive the world around me, I guess. All these are the different books that I read last time, and there's still some more books that I read obviously, but I just didn't include in this video. And I think it's a bit messy because it's been many years since I read all these books, and like I kind of forget some parts. So everything I give today is just a very broad overview. So if you want me to really discuss or like dissect certain like texts that I read last time, do let me know. Anything literature related, mythology, ancient history and all these things, they all fascinate me so much. So yeah, that's all for today. So do like, share and subscribe. And please comment down below if you are interested in any of this. And yes, do let me know if you're actually interested in any of the topics I mentioned today. Yep, that's all for today. Bye!